Ladies and gentlemen, you're watching another edition of World Talks here on TVP World, where every word matters. I'm your host, Benjamin Lee. Please join me and my guests on this exclusive interview. Now, Poland, France, Germany, and Italy have signed a letter of intent to develop long-range cruise missiles, enhancing Europe's defense capabilities. This initiative, aiming for missiles with a range of over 500 kilometers, comes as Poland increases its defense spending to 5% of GDP, the highest in NATO. Meanwhile, as global tensions rise, the attempted assassination of former US President Donald Trump introduced yet another dynamic into the equation. Joining us on TVP World to discuss these issues is General Jaroslaw Kraszewski. Hello, sir, and welcome to TVP World.
Hey, good morning. Hello.
So I would like to start with the most immediate topic, as we saw the attempted assassination of the former US President Donald Trump. And I'm wondering whether or not this is going to have a ripple effect across the geopolitical landscape.
In my opinion, first of all, it shouldn't have happened. This incident with the attempt to assassinate President Trump, because as we know, the firing distance was about 120 meters. It's not far away, so Secret Service shouldn't allow anybody suspicious to be at the top of the roof, specifically with the suspicious bags, because you have to carry it out. Rifle, which is in one piece, together with the ammunition and together with the additional equipment with the big bag. And additionally, I've heard in the TV stations the observers and the guests during the meeting with the President Trump informed the policeman about a suspicious guy walking at the top of the roof with the gun, and nothing happened. So in my opinion, it should be the main topic of the investigation, and we have to wait up to the final results being publicly announced that FBI or another organization conducted a very detailed, specific investigation and developed or discovered the mistakes of police, Secret Service, or somebody else being in charge of the, we call it the force protection during such events.
Right, and geopolitically speaking, in terms of defense and security, now traditionally Trump is known as quite a wild card. So I'm also wondering if this might cement his position as the U.S. president. If that becomes a reality, what course do you see the U.S. taking if he indeed takes the presidency in November?
That's the good question. In my opinion, he will take the direction to increase, besides the common opinions being announced around, in the direction to increase the force presence in the Baltic countries and the eastern border of NATO, because those countries, according to his declarations, paid much more than 2% of the GDP declared in 2014, so basically 10 years ago. So according to his declarations, B9 countries should be, let's say, reinforced by the presence of US troops and military assets. Second, this is a bit risky and dangerous. Probably he will take a direction towards China, because during the first presidency, he was a bit crazy, let's say in this way, about the China, and he was positively crazy about the security and freedom of Taiwan. So US will do a lot of things to protect the island, to use the alliance around Taiwan, like Japan, Australia, South Korea, Vietnam, and others, to put a lot of efforts and pressure on the China to withdraw with the initial ideas to solve finally and ultimately the problem with the Taiwan.
Right, and you
I'm
just
not
sorry.
sure about the Ukraine. I'm not sure about the Ukraine. If US will go to Taiwan, Ukraine will stay in the hands of Europe.
Right, and speaking of hands of Europe, I would actually like to turn our attention to this part of the world and talk about this joint initiative, the letter of intent to develop a long-range cruise missiles. Now, can you help us understand how this might enhance the defensive and offensive capabilities of the involved countries within NATO? You can see here on our website we have an article published about it with more information, but I'm hoping that you can help us unpack how this might enhance the defense of this region.
It's crucially important because Europe is suffering the lack of such ammunition. I mean, with the range more than 300 kilometers. I'm not talking about the 500 kilometers. The last such weaponry systems we had from the former Soviet Union during the Warsaw Pact. Later, NATO countries from Europe, some of them were equipped by the US with the MLRS system and rockets called ATACMS with a range approximately 300 kilometers. And in such a geopolitical situation, Europe needs to have the weaponry system with the range more than 500 kilometers. As we know, US, starting from, I guess, 2025, will implement the new rocket system, which is after ATACMS, exactly with the range of 500 kilometers. This is why I consider this initiative as so important. It's good that Poland is part of this initiative, because everybody knows that in 2-3 years we will be the largest, let's say, rocket launcher power in Europe. Simply speaking, Poland will have approximately 500 HIMARS launchers. This is why we should have capability in Europe. It would be good in Poland to manufacture at least ATACMS missiles up to the time when those countries which signed up the initiative paper will introduce that, okay, we are ready. The missile is after the final tests, and we start the implementation process.
Right. I want to draw attention to something you mentioned earlier. Like you said, Europe is lacking in this type of ammunition. And we're not just talking about 500-kilometer ones, but even the 300-kilometer ones, we're still falling a little bit short. So I'm wondering, when it comes to developing these long-range missiles, do you see any technological and operational challenges that needs to be overcome?
Yes, that's the good question, because the lessons learned from the war in Ukraine. The main conclusion is that the navigation of such a weaponry system is so crucial. So far, basically, we based on the GPS and inertia. But the Russians have developed devices which can make such navigations impossible to direct the missile in a precise way, because the main factor during the development process is just to have it as precise as possible. Because 300 kilometers is long range. So, for instance, right now in Warsaw we have a sunny, good weather, no wind, and 500 kilometers, let's say, east. The weather conditions could be quite different. So the missile can go in a very different direction. And the precision is in such a situation is not so good as we would like to have. This is why the precision, the navigation is mandatory and is a main challenge during the development process. And the second one is jet engine. So the European scientists, military scientists. They have to sit down at the table and develop the best jet engine to allow such a missile to fly over 500 kilometers. And the last point is a warhead. In the warhead, we have a lot of experience. And I think that if we connect capabilities from those countries, we should develop the very good and very effective warheads with a huge firepower. So within 5-6 years, Europe should announce that we have our own missiles capable to be fired by HIMARS systems. And that's going to be the good sign for the Russian Federation that we are much stronger in the firepower than 5 years ago.
Right.
Which is a good sign.
A lot of moving parts all coming together to facilitate this happening. And of course, that's going to involve a lot of investment. But thankfully, Poland has also been one of the biggest investors in the defense industry. And we're looking at Poland to be committing to increase defense spending to 5% of GDP compared to other NATO countries. So very briefly, what does this message, what message does this send to both NATO allies and NATO's adversaries?
I remember when I was in the military advisor to the president, and many times we were talking about the possibility to increase the GDP. At that time, it was at the level of 2%. And after 2 or 3 visits of Israeli friends dealing with the national security and military, they told us that you need to have at least 5%, like Israel. If you have a 5% of GDP, you are safe. And the President Duda was afraid to announce publicly that, okay, we will start the process to reach such and such level of GDP allocated for the defense. Then you should remember the first attempt, and he during the national holiday, he announced that the Poland aspiration is to have a 2.5,
right.
And this announcement started a huge national-wide discussion why Poland. Why our country is going to spend such and such huge amount of money on defense. Of course, the main reason is that we have to exchange all the previous post-Soviet equipment and introduce the brand new one. This is why Poland right now is doing a lot of activities, the trade activities, basically, with the US and South Korea and others, to have a brand new equipment, which is according to the NATO standards. Right. And this is more important, but the most important is that the equipment is going to be implemented, let's say, immediately, right, as soon as possible, because we don't have too much time to rearrange the structures, to rearrange the education and training procedures in the armed forces, because, as you know, the Russian Federation is unpredictable. Even if they need to rebuild the firepower after the war with Ukraine, in my opinion, it will take like 6-7 years. So we have 2-3 years more to, first of all, introduce it, I mean the new equipment. Secondly, to get ready to operate with at the highest level of performance. Right,
very well said. And of course, with the Russian threat looming on the border, time is of the essence. Thank you so much for your input and insight. Really appreciate it. General Jaroslaw Kraszewski, thank you for being with us on TVP World.
Yeah, bye-bye.
Take care. And with that, we conclude this edition of our interview. But for more news, update, and commentary, please stay tuned to TVP World.